In the 17th century, the Mughal Empire functioned as a massive, highly organized global power. Its territory covered nearly the entire Indian subcontinent, housing a sophisticated and wealthy civilization. A long period of internal stability transformed India into a manufacturing hub for the pre-industrial world. Artisans working these looms and spinning wheels dominated the global textile trade, producing fabrics that were highly valued across every major market. By the late 19th century, the situation reversed. The region's manufacturing base had vanished, replaced by deep poverty and a series of severe, recurring famines. This transition from a global economic leader to a territory defined by mass starvation requires an explanation that goes beyond simple misfortune. Standard accounts of this period often suggest that India simply stagnated, while Europe naturally pulled ahead through superior innovation. In 1867, Dadabhai Naoroji challenged that narrative. He proposed that India's economic decline was the result of an intentional system of extraction. He called it the drain of wealth theory. Naoroji argued that the British Empire operated as a massive siphon, pulling capital directly out of the Indian economy to fund its own global expansion. John Sullivan, the president of the Board of Revenue in Madras, used a famous metaphor to describe this process. He said their system acted like a sponge, drawing up all the good things from the banks of the Ganges and squeezing them down on the banks of the Thames. Naoroji's work suggested that India's poverty was tied to a specific administrative architecture designed to manage the flow of capital. The installation of that architecture accelerated after the Battle of Plassey in 1757. Military victory gave the British East India Company the political authority to collect taxes directly from Indian citizens. Before this takeover, British merchants imported physical gold and silver to pay for highly desired Indian textiles. Once the company held tax rights, the gold stopped arriving. Instead, they used local taxes to purchase Indian goods, officially labeled the investment. By using the local tax base to fund their purchases, the British acquired Indian exports for free, executing a massive unilateral transfer of wealth. This extraction was formalized in the colonial records under a heading called Home Charges. Essentially, the British were billing India for the costs of its own administration. The ledger included salaries for London officials and pensions for retired officers, deducted directly from Indian tax revenues. The largest entry was debt interest. India was forced to pay interest on massive loans used to fund its own military conquest. While funds flowed out, the colonial government imposed heavy tariffs on Indian textiles, ensuring Indian industry couldn't compete with the mechanized mills of Lancashire. These policies transitioned India from a wealthy exporter of finished goods into a captive market that was forced to buy British products. Proponents of British rule often point to the construction of the Indian railway network as a sign of modernization and progress. In reality, the tracks ran from the interior directly to the ports, bypassing Indian commercial hubs to prioritize the rapid export of raw materials. The financing of these rails was another massive drain. They guaranteed high returns to foreign investors, using taxes to subsidize British firms. Even these infrastructure projects functioned as tools of extraction, designed to pull resources out of the country more efficiently. This continuous drain had a profound impact on the local economy. By removing the financial surplus, the British left India with no domestic capital to invest in its own industrial growth. This capital-starved economy sat in stark contrast to the boom on the Thames. The massive wealth accumulated in London provided the necessary capital to build the steamships and grand architecture of the British industrial landscape. Naoroji's data-driven analysis of this drain eventually became the intellectual foundation for the Indian national movement. By framing the British government as a parasite instead of a caretaker, this critique eroded the empire's moral foundations, making self-rule the only logical demand. The legacy of this extraction remains clear. The Western Industrial Revolution relied on a massive, steady subsidy of extracted Eastern wealth. The widening gap between Western prosperity and Indian poverty was an engineered outcome of imperial policy. To understand the origins of global economic inequality, we must look beyond the narrative of innovation and examine the historical ledgers of extraction.